as well. Perfect, Jenny, thanks. So we'll be recording this workshop, and then the presentation slides and the recording will be shared on our webpage. So after each speaker, we'll take some questions if there's time, but otherwise we can revisit questions. There's a Q&A section at the end of each panel, or if there's more questions maybe we didn't have time for, each presenter's contact information will be on the last slide of their presentation, and you can always reach out to learn more. And then lastly here, my colleague Jenny will be assisting with compiling questions and the technical side of things. So very thankful she's here with us today, and she's going to briefly explain some Zoom meeting reminders and tips. So welcome, Jenny.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We have such a large crowd. It's great to see some of your faces. My name is Jenny Kedward. I'm a teammate of Allaire and happy to be here. If this is your first Zoom, I don't know how you got through the last year. This is probably not your first Zoom. Our interactions today will be really the chat function, and you can always use your reaction button. All of these are at the bottom of your screen under the presentation. I'll be watching as questions come in and compiling them for our presenters. We'll, depending on time, we'll have time for 1 or 2 questions after each presenter, but then we do have a Q&A part where I'll ask all the rest of the questions. And if for some reason we don't get to all the questions, don't worry, we'll get back to you. Your question was not lost, and we'll get back to you by email for any questions that we didn't get to. And then we'll go over breakout rooms later, but really use that chat function even just to say a kudos or a virtual high five. We all appreciate that when we are remote. Thank you all.
Perfect. So let's take a practice poll here just to kick things off. So Jenny's going to pull that up for us. So our practice poll, is a hot dog a sandwich? Curious to know. Ooh, it's kind of neck and neck.
We have a lot of food service staff on, so
I know, I feel like they're probably the experts.
Yes, they are.
All right.
We're about a quarter of people have told us. So I'll end it after another 10 seconds. That'll be a minute.
And there'll be a few polls throughout the workshop. So now you know how to use that polling function, hopefully. So pretty close, but believe that a hot dog is a sandwich according to this poll. A few are undecided though. So hopefully everybody now feels like they have a grasp on one more sandwich to add to the menu and also how to use your poll function. So let's get started here with our first panel. So our first panel topic's related to Green Team successes and challenges. A Green Team is typically an organized group of students who work together to make their school more sustainable, maybe helping with project implementation, providing an opportunity for students to actively learn and be leaders. Our focus is typically on waste reduction and recycling, but student green teams in schools often work on other aspects of environmental stewardship, as well including energy savings, water conservation, gardens and landscaping. For the first time in 2020, our new school waste prevention and recycling grant program included support to start a student green team or engage an existing one, as all of our large grants, so grants more than $1,000, required student green team assistance throughout the project. Our support included a staff stipend, funds for purchasing green team resources, consultant assistance to build a green team plan, and educational resources and videos. 2 green team leader learning sessions were hosted, And schools were required to submit a green team plan focusing educational efforts on back to basics recycling, as well as wasted food prevention. And keep in mind, this all happened during COVID year. So the work that these schools have done is really quite incredible. By helping more schools start or enhance student green teams, the goal is that the projects implemented during the grant remain successful and supported long-term. So hopefully this session will provide you some insight into starting a student green team at your school, or maybe even enhancing an existing club, or adding these responsibilities into another student group. Those are all options that have worked well for different schools. So in this panel, we're going to hear from 4 Dakota County schools that participated in the grant program in 2020 on their green team successes and challenges. Our first speaker will be Angie Martin. Angie has been an EL teacher at Echo Park Elementary in School District 196 for the last 18 years. She's recently taken on the role of school green team leader and is here to share some of her exciting initiatives. Take it away, Angie, and she'll be sharing her screen. So I'm going to stop my share here, but let's welcome her. All right, Angie, and if you're talking, you are on mute still.
Okay.
There you are.
Thank you, Allie. In the winter of 2020, I had started teaching kids to reuse their plastic breakfast bags. I became very passionate about this and went up to my former principal and said, I have a great idea. Let's start teaching the whole school to reuse their breakfast bags. He looked at me and said, no, it's hard enough to teach them to subtract. I laughed and said, they're going to grow up to sit on a heap of trash subtracting. He came to me many times later and said he should have responded differently. And then he signed up for this grant and asked if I wanted to be in charge of the green team. I start with this story because I think it was the reaction of many employees at Echo Park. The first thought was, this is one more thing I have to do. But then they came around and saw the benefits. Each day, kids carefully sorted out their trash, talked about saving the trees, and found leadership roles. Recycling empowered kids to actually do something that made a difference. They got to feel this empowerment at a time when the world felt bleak. They would come up to me and say, I love recycling, or my favorite, recycling feels kind of good. For example, here's a poem a third grader wrote. Eat all of your food to keep Earth clean. Appreciate, recycle. Tell people to keep Earth clean. Help everything and everyone. Do chores and help out. Animals need help too. You have a goal of recycling. I love Earth Day. At the beginning of the year, the green team was just a few kids who met on Zoom. Our first effort was to get students to recycle their empty milk cartons. My principal was very supportive in that he would play any videos I made in the weekly announcements that the whole school watched. And here's the video we made.
My name is Annika, and hi, my name is Etta. We are part of the Green Team. Today we're going to teach you about these blue recycling bins. They're for recycling only, not trash. We are going to start by recycling empty milk cartons. It is important to either drink all of your milk or dump it out. Dump it out carefully, like this. Then put your empty milk carton into the recycling bin. Do not put any of the trash in there. Thank you for taking care of our Earth.
Recycling milk cartons worked during hybrid in the fall. But in the winter, when all the kids came back, the smaller liquids containers that you can see here did not hold all of the milk, and the recycling bins became too contaminated to actually recycle. So only a few classes where the teachers were willing to monitor the recycling continued to recycle their milk cartons. I won't make you watch this again. This year, I spent a lot of time looking closely and thinking about solutions. Breakfast came in cardboard boxes that took up a lot of space in the trash. These containers were recyclable, but we needed to explicitly teach kids how. If I told them to throw them in the large recycling bins, sporks and napkins would go with them, contaminating the recycling. So I taught the kids how to break them down. I worked closely with a first grade class. I figured if first graders could do this, so can most of the school. To incorporate it into their math standards, we tried to recycle 100 boxes before the 100th day of school. And then we made a video again to show on the announcements. I'm gonna start here.
Recycle them so we can save the trees because the trees help us breathe.
Go.
We are recycling 100 of our breakfast containers for the 100th day of school. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 81, 82, 83.
How many breakfast containers are we trying to recycle?
100.
And Jonah, on Friday, what day is it?
The 100th day of school.
Okay, so when we have succeeded, we'll have 100. Let's figure out how many more we need. So can you highlight the ones we have, Ms. Reamer? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 81, 82, 83. Boys and girls, how many more do we need? Emma, how many more do we need?
17.
Does your class want to do a recycling challenge? Contact Ms. Martin.
So 17 classes went on to do the 100-box recycling challenge. After they recycled 100 boxes, they received a book that we bought with the grants rewards money, and I made a video celebrating their accomplishment. And on the Echo Park website, the Green Team has a website that has all the videos if you're interested in seeing them. Some teachers jumped on this opportunity right away. Others did it after I approached them, and others never joined in. A long-term sub started without even talking to me. She assigned leaders, one in charge of 1, 2, and 5 plastics, one in charge of milk cartons, and one in charge of breakfast containers. The best part of these challenges was the leadership opportunities for all students. For example, a struggling primary student with autism became passionate about collecting and counting the boxes and led his class through the challenge. The other best part is that it worked. At the beginning of the year, the trash dumpster overflowed and the custodian had to store trash inside for the next day. That was no longer the case. He estimated there were 4 to 5 less bags than before and stressed that the bags themselves were expensive. I also worked on cleaning up the classroom recycling bins. In the past, the classroom recycling bins had become so contaminated with trash that the custodians had to throw the contents away. I sent emails with information about what can and can't be recycled, and quickly heard back from teachers that this was new to them too. Teachers did not know that plastic bags and black plastic, for example, were not recyclable. I visited classrooms and sorted out recycling and trash in front of kids. I made a presentation about what recycling was so kids understood why it was important. I found small bins are better to use than large ones. Contaminants would get lost in the large bins, but were easy to pull out of small ones. Our school was not comfortable putting recycling loose into the dumpsters outside, so we used plastic bags. We worried that loose recycling would blow into neighbors' yards. We knew we had to stop doing this, so after much thinking, I came up with the idea to use the boxes from the cafeteria to collect recycling. Incorporating the compost bin. As part of our grant, we got a large backyard compost bin. We put this up for Earth Day, and third graders did a project where they composted or recycled everything they could from their lunch that day. Later in spring, I made a presentation explaining why we compost and gave it to classes. My goal was for every Echo Park student to compost one thing by the end of the year. I would estimate 1/3 to a half of them did that, which was a step in the right direction. I had some very touching moments. I would be walking down the hallway with a bin of uneaten carrots, and a little girl in a hijab would ask me if I was going to the compost bin. A mom told me how her son was so excited that he asked her to take him to Echo Park after school so he could see the bin. Saving food. At the beginning of the year, we had to throw away all uneaten food from kids' breakfasts and lunches because of COVID restrictions. But at the end of the year, we met with the food service director, and he gave us, new guidelines. We started collecting uneaten food in these cooler bins. We received this from the grant, and it actually has magnets on it that are really cool too, but we didn't use them for our purposes. But these white bins, you put them in the freezer overnight, and then they keep stuff cold for up to 6 hours. And redistribute it. So we were able to put food, unopened food in there and redistribute it as snacks. This was by far the most popular and satisfying and effective initiative I took this year. Our school has many low-income students that need snacks provided for them. We were able to offer healthy snacks like cheese sticks, prepackaged carrots, craisins, turkey sticks, or yogurt instead of the granola bars and sugary cereal we had been giving them. I'll end with this last video I made, which shows how far some of the kids came. This was at the very end of the year. And
Hi, Echo Park students. We will recycle these boxes. We will recycle these cups. We are gonna recycle these milk baskets. We are going to get it in orange. We're outside recycling our breakfast and our milk. Recycling bin outside. And it says recycling here, and here are the cardboard boxes, and here are the milk cartons.
This is all the recycling boxes in the whole Echo Park community. The whole thing in Echo Park. This is the recycling.
Hi, Echo Park students. This is Ms. Martin.
Sorry.
This is my last video, and I want to take a second to thank all of you that spent time. Hi, Echo Park students. This is Ms. Martin.
Did I stop screen sharing? No.
Not yet.
Okay.
But thank you so much, Angie. Wow.
I have one
Incredible.
more. Okay, and then that's just my contact information.
Perfect. Thank you, Angie. And I'm putting in the Echo Park Green Team webpage into the chat. I would highly encourage everyone to visit the Echo Park Green Team webpage and check out all the amazing videos that Angie's created with her students. As you can see, she's really done some incredible work, and that's just, you know, a 10-minute snippet of it. So if you need more information, check out the website. Let's start networking with each other if you have questions, and kind of just build on all the efforts that she's done over this past year. It's really impressive. So thank you so much, Angie, for sharing that with us.
Thanks.
And next, our next speaker is going to be Lauren Traynor. Lauren is starting her 5th year as principal at the School of Environmental Studies in Apple Valley School District 196. It's her dream job because she's always learning from her students and the teachers. She loves the interdisciplinary active learning that SES promotes. Prior to working at SES, she was the building administrator at Dakota Ridge School. And when she was in the classroom, she was a special education teacher. Welcome, Lauren. Thanks for being here.
For having me. Good morning, everyone. Like Allie said, I am the principal at the School of Environmental Studies, or SES for short. And I'm here this morning to share with you the story of trying to create a school-wide food waste reduction program. SES is a remarkable school. We are part of the Rosemont Apple Valley Egan School District. We're a magnet school. Obviously, our theme is environmental studies. We only serve 11th and 12th graders. And so the opportunities and some of the work that our students can do is pretty amazing. We have had many, many students do some unbelievable leadership different projects to participate and to serve our community. But one thing that we knew we were struggling with a little bit was that, well, we had some pretty kind of rock star students that were able to accomplish some amazing things, like get a wind turbine on our campus, or get our building LEED certified, completely a student-driven program. At the same time, we knew that there were students of our 400 that on a daily basis lacked an opportunity to interact or behave in a way on a daily basis where they felt like they were contributing to a more sustainable community. And so that didn't feel right. We didn't want it to just be sustainability to be part of our curriculum or a project certain students did here or there. We wanted all 400 students every day to feel like they were contributing to making our SES community and our greater community more sustainable. So it was a problem and it was a challenge that we definitely wanted to address. And so it seemed like reducing food waste would be a good place to start, something that all of our kids go to the lunchroom every day. It should be something that they should all be able to participate in. And so we certainly, as a faculty and staff community, had the will to do it. It was important to us, but we lacked the skill and specifically the time to figure out how to implement it. And so it ended up being super good luck that Vandercook sent out an email saying that for that year, Dakota County had secured a Green Corps member that would be available free of charge to come into schools that were interested and talk about how to reduce food waste. And so we took advantage of that opportunity, and Hannah was our Green Corps member, and she was absolutely fabulous in helping us figure out exactly how much food we were wasting. So you can see here, actually, there's a picture of our food service manager, our kitchen manager, standing there with the students, and they're kind of doing a plan of action about how they were going to audit how much food was wasted. And then figure out a plan on how we could educate the whole building on how to reduce that food waste, and then of course do a final audit to see if our efforts were successful. We were not the only school that participated and took advantage of the Green Corps member that Dakota County was offering. And so I know these slides will be shown later. There's like a 74-page document, if you click right here, where you can get a lot of information, specifically the whole process that we were led through. And there's a lot of great picture and information and data. But I don't think you want to see all 74 pages here today. So just know that that's a resource if you're interested. But essentially what happened was we became very excited. What Hannah, our Green Corps member, taught us was that we were wasting food and that there were things that we could do to decrease that waste. However, what we also learned once Hannah's time with us was over was that sustaining that was really tricky. And again, it wasn't that we didn't have the will or the passion to do it, but anybody who works in a school knows that time is very, very tricky. Teachers are incredibly busy. They're teaching all day, they're prepping, and if they get a chance to maybe shove some food down their throats for, a 10-minute lunch, if they get it, they really don't have time to be standing in the lunchroom supporting the sorting that we learned was required to reduce our food waste. And so we lost some momentum. It became increasingly clear that we didn't need, the ideas, but that we really needed a plan to ensure that we could be sustainable and that we could continue this work. And so actually Dakota County came to the rescue again for us, this time not by providing a Green Corps member who could come in and do the work for us, but we actually applied for the school waste prevention and recycling grant and were awarded it. And the structure and support and flexibility of that grant is what really ended up being a game changer for us. The grant provided us with stuff, and that was great. You can see pictures here. They gave us brand new, beautiful recycling and trash containers that were paired next to each other and labeled lovely. That share table that Angie, the previous presenter, was showing, we got one of those as well. We were able to purchase t-shirts for our green team members so that they could be loud and proud about it. But more importantly than the stuff that the grant allowed us to buy, what was really the game changer for us was that they allowed us to use some of that grant money to work with a consultant. Her name was Jody Tate. We didn't pick her. The county even did the work for us in finding a wonderful person to help us. And she works for a little company called Eco Concilium, which is a waste diversion consulting firm. And she sat down with us, and the grant also provided money for staff and faculty to be part of regular meetings. So for 6 consecutive weeks, we met once a week for 90 minutes. And there were 4 teachers that joined us. There were 2 students. Our food service manager came, our building chief came, and then of course I was there as well to ensure that I could provide support. And Jody provided examples of strategic sustainability plans that other schools had used. She also listened and helped us brainstorm what was important, and really specifically to SES, what did we need to ensure that we were going to have a plan that didn't depend on teachers giving up their lunch hours or just really great powerhouse students that happen to have passion leading some type of initiative and then graduating and leaving, and then there was nothing left. So Jody really helped us think through what were our specific goals and what were our challenges. And we essentially were able to for SES, we found that there were really 8 components that were important to us that we needed to consider. And so the first one was the importance of creating a green team, and that's certain student leaders and a few teachers leaders who really wanted to make sure that once this plan was written, we referred back to it. We met during lunch sometimes, and we didn't lose sight of it. We also knew that we were going to have a plan. SES is just a 2-year school, so we don't really have students for that long. And so there's always this idea of the new cohort of students coming in. So we knew that we needed to have a way to onboard those new students, because all students, all teachers, all of the members of our community, not just the green team, are expected to help out with our food waste reduction efforts. We also knew that we needed to have a schedule of events that we needed to commit to early in the year, certain times during the school day, that we were going to have all students and all teachers address topics around waste reduction. Get it on the calendar soon. We knew that we wanted to look at topics of sustainability and that we wanted that to be part of our curriculum throughout the school day for all students. And again, not just have it be a green team initiative. I also knew, my faculty gave me this feedback and I appreciated it, that if we're going to expect students to be passionate and to understand certain topics around sustainability and food waste reduction, that the faculty also needed to have regular professional development around that. So a commitment to ensure that we bring in speakers and go on field trips ourselves as adults to stay fresh and current. Also knew that we wanted things to be student and data driven whenever possible. And so a commitment to that. And then making sure that our commitment to sustainability is obvious in our words, in our actions, on our website, hanging on our walls. And then the next piece of that is doing things just like what I'm doing right now, which is making sure that SES is represented in our greater community, that our faculty and student voices are shared, just to contribute to the greater community's efforts in this as well. So everybody talks about, but COVID. So we got this really great plan that we were super excited about. And I have to be honest, we weren't able to do all of the things that all of those 8 components I just shared with you this last year, but we did do some great things. And I'll just share a few examples with you before I finish. I'm not going to click this video. It's not as cute as the ones Angie shared because there aren't any first graders in it. But this is a video that our students on our green team created to share with their peers. So students teaching students about why we're asking them to stand in this food sorting line and put, compost in one and recycle in the other and sort it all out. So this is a video that you'll be able to access later if it seems like something you might want to check out for your school. Also, that commitment that students were going to make the signage and that they were going to be the ones helping their peers through the line. So it's not an adult kind of shoving the information down their throats. So these are 2 of our students that volunteered their lunchtime on a regular basis and made the signage and helped their peers out. We also really have that commitment to getting the student leaders who are interested in being on the green team and getting them the information and having it be something that's available to everybody. So I have here, if you're interested later, you can click and learn how do we recruit and sell our green team and what are kind of the important components of what being part of our green team is. If you're interested in our entire sustainability plan, you can click here and see it. I won't make you read it now, but it is accessible to you. But we're really excited that we have the plan. And like I said, it was really the game changer to make sure that we can stay focused on every student every day contributing to making SES a more sustainable place. And so if you'd like to access that later, you're welcome to. And here's my contact information if you want to reach out. I firmly believe that if SES, which is a school that's dedicated to sustainability and environmental studies, struggled to figure out a way to implement a process for a school-wide food waste reduction, that any school could struggle. And don't reinvent the wheel, and feel free to reach out if you've got any questions as we continue on our journey.
Great. Thank you so much, Lauren. Such incredible things. Am I muted? No. Such incredible things from SES. Just so much great work that took place there. And I'm going to do my reaction here, a little hand clap, because that was amazing. And I would definitely recommend, when you get a chance, when the slides are posted, to check out their strategic plan. I think everybody could take something from it. And then in considering if your school will be starting your strategic plan, or how do you keep your efforts sustainable, it might be something to consider. So thanks again. Next, we have Jill Croonquist. Jill is a 4th grade teacher at Kaposia Education Center in South St. Paul. For the past 10 years, she's been the leader of the Green Warriors, a group of 4th and 5th graders who volunteer to stay after school once a week to help collect recycling from classrooms. Thanks, Jill. And as you have questions, I just thought I'd mention this too. Feel free to put them in the chat and we will have some time at the end to answer everyone's questions. And Jill, if you're there, we're not hearing you yet. Oh, hi, Jill. I see ya. No, not yet. Here, let's see here. Yeah, it doesn't look like you're on mute. That's weird.
Maybe call in Jill. We can get you a number.
Yeah, Jill, here. How about Josie, would you be okay going first? And then we can troubleshoot with Jill's speakers.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that should work.
Okay. So here
Sounds
I will introduce just flexibility on the fly. We'll make it work. So I'll introduce Josie here, and then we'll make sure we can get this to work, Jill. So Josie, Josie Allaire, she's our green team leader from Fit Academy Charter School in Apple Valley. Josie previously worked as the elementary French teacher from 2019 to 2020, and she's excited to join the discussion today and exchange ideas on ways to integrate more green initiatives in schools. So thanks for being here, Josie, and take it away.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. And it's been great listening to other speakers, hear other ideas that maybe Fit Academy can use as well. So today I'll just be talking about Fit Academy's green team initiatives this year. So we initially started our green team at the beginning of 2020 when we received the school waste prevention and recycling grant from Dakota County. So since then, we've been kind of coming up with ideas for how to make this work within our school. So I'll just get started with some ideas that we have implemented this year. First of all, with the grant, we were really able to get our recycling system in order, to get the right color-coded containers and get the right labeling up to date. And also we were able to incorporate a lot of lunchroom items in order to reduce waste. And obviously we were able to start the green team as well and get a stipend for a green team leader, which was really helpful in having that leadership to kind of lead the efforts for the first year. So some educational ideas that we implemented, I'll go through some. So first of all, we did Green Scouts. So our goal was to educate the whole Fit community about recycling, right, and waste reduction, but we wanted it to be not just a one and done educational component, but more of a sustainable thing throughout the year that students would think about every day. So we decided on doing Green Scouts. So a Green Scout is like a classroom helper. So in the elementary classrooms, there's already a helper system in place. So it kind of played on that idea and just extended it by adding a Green Scout. And so that way students each month would be chosen by their teacher to be the Green Scout, and they would help with making sure the classroom is, adhering to green behavior. And one of our takebacks though was this was a great way to keep students engaged throughout the year, kind of get them thinking about what would a Green Scout be, and also when we would have those educational sessions, really feeling like they had some learning from those sessions and really feeling like they had some leadership to incorporate it in the classroom. Another take back, I think, it would be helpful to have a list of items maybe for what the Green Scout can do, since it wasn't really defined as much, since it was our first year just trying it out. But I think it was a pretty good system for keeping students engaged throughout the year. Here are some items that we use to promote Green Team within the school, just to kind of get students to know about what we're doing this year. Especially with COVID, obviously it was kind of difficult. But so what we did with our Green Scouts is with the Dakota County grant, we bought these magnetic badges that were made from 100% recycled materials from Eco Promotions. And that's something that they can use from year to year. So it's a pretty sustainable item to purchase. We also got hats for our Green Team students and staff. And the hats incorporated the Fit Academy logo too. So if you see on our first slide, the logo kind of looks similar. And we actually had the middle school science teacher made the logo. So it was made in-house, and then we just purchased the hats. So that was a great way because the hats are adjustable as well. So students could have one and then use it down the line. And also, you know, we could wash them and reuse them as well. So it was a somewhat sustainable purchase too for students to promote Green Team. Other educational things we did is we got books on recycling and waste reduction, and distributed these to the classroom. So kind of similar to what Echo was doing as well. And most of what I found from this was that a lot of the books we purchased were K through 3rd books. So it was a little difficult to find books for older grades that address recycling and waste reduction in specific, but we were able to find some for the 4th and 5th graders, like as you see the recycled science book, which takes the idea of taking recyclable materials and making them into something unique or new, kind of incorporating maybe the engineering into recycling. So yeah, that was, we haven't really come up with a full system for incorporating the books in the classroom. Like we want to do a raffle system, but with COVID and a lot of it being distance learning, it was kind of difficult to get that organized. So hopefully next year we'll have a better system for distributing the books and exchanging them. Another thing that we did this year was really work to engage the science classrooms in Green Team, because a lot of the science teachers are already teaching things like earth sciences and things that are really related to sustainability curriculum in general. So we got a lot of really good ideas from the middle school science teacher who was already working on building a aquaponics system in his classroom. And kind of, we thought about utilizing this system to also teach the younger grades about aquaponics. We had the idea of taking students, you know, just on a mini field trip up to the science class to visit the aquaponics system and learn about it. And I have a little graphic on the right. If you don't know what aquaponics is, it's a closed loop system that really is like a way of farming and growing that reduces a lot of water waste and transportation waste. So that was fun to hear from him as well. He had many other ideas to incorporate extra credit opportunities too for students to participate in Earth Day presentations or participate in the school-wide Earth Day campaign. So those were good opportunities for students to get engaged or encourage engagement into Green Team. He also had a really good idea that for one of the assignments in the class, they would be required to do a certain amount of community service hours that were working in the community on environmentally beneficial actions and do a reflection on this experience. So I thought that was a pretty cool idea too. The next two slides are things that we also did this year that were supported by Dakota County. So we participated in the Dakota County poster contest, which was pretty fun. This was a good way to get the science teacher and art teacher working together to first of all teach about recycled science, and then after that incorporate an artistic component to it as well. So I think the students really enjoyed this, especially because it was a contest too. So and then some students were able to submit their posters to the county and received some recycling materials in return. Another idea that we did this year was the Trisha and Toonies show, which was completely free as it's funded by Dakota County. And it's a play performance that comes to your school. And this was pretty fun, I think, for the K through 3rd grades, as it's mostly for, I think, younger students. I think they had tried to incorporate older students in the past, but it was a little bit more difficult. So I think for the younger grades, it's pretty fun. The only thing is the coordinating time and space is something that you have to keep in mind as well. So we also did a lot to improve our waste this year, since that is a huge majority of how to think sustainably within schools is the waste, because there's a lot of waste that comes from the classroom or from the lunchroom. So as you can see, there's a photo of what we received from the county was some outdoor recycling bins, which was super helpful. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the ways we addressed waste this year. So kind of pretty much similar to the other two presenters, we did the share table. We also did a flavor station. So this gives students the option to flavor their food so that they're more likely to enjoy it or eat it. If they like it a certain way, they can kind of choose. And that way it kind of reduces waste, hopefully. So, and then we got a mini refrigerator, which helps us refrigerate some of those share table items, and as well did the green team vest for students to wear if preferred, if they were doing, if they were, monitoring the waste stations. So yeah, those are some of the things that we did for our lunchroom. We also did, we tried to do plastics recycling this year, and that was a super fun initiative, but it was also a lot of work. But it was a really great, fun way, I think, to educate people about the fact that there is the option to recycle your plastics, and that your plastic bags and those items shouldn't go in the regular recycling. So the way we did it is we signed up for the Trex recycling program because they have a school-wide challenge, and the challenge involves signing up, and you get three free bins, as you can see in the picture, as well as some posters. And to participate in the challenge, you have to input how much weight of plastic you're recycling. And basically Trex takes the plastic and turns it into wood decking and railing. So what we did is we did a drop-off system, drop-off in school and outside of school, so parents could participate as well from home. And I think we overall weighed like 100 or 267 pounds of plastic. So it was pretty successful in that people really wanted to participate in recycling their plastics. One thing I think for next year would be to focus less on the challenge and more so just use the bins that we got and the educational component that we did to still have the plastic recycling in school, but mainly for the office plastics, because that's where a lot of it seemed to come from, was like packaging that came in, or like packages that came in and all the packaging that's involved in there. So we're thinking of maybe just having that one bin to address those in-school plastics. And so we have 2 extra bins if somebody wants one. So yeah, that was pretty fun. You can also see a picture on the top left of how one of our teachers was collecting plastics in the classroom. That's Jennifer. She's a special education teacher collecting the plastics. As you can tell, 267 pounds is a lot of plastic because it's so lightweight. So I think one thing too that came in was that maybe we should focus on reducing our waste versus encouraging recycling plastics, which is something to think about for next year. Even though I do think it was important to let people know that this does exist for people to recycle them and use it in a sustainable way. Lastly, one waste event that we did was our Plate to Garden event, which we which was supported by the Minnesota Composting Council. And at this event, our goal was really to raise some money for our school, and then also to educate the FIT community about composting and engage surrounding community members, to let them know about FIT Academy, but then also to kind of engage with the school environment in general. So part of the event was working with Minnesota Composting Council to get all the materials that we needed. So they provided shovels and things like that. And we contacted one of the composting facilities nearby, and they donated pretty much everything, like the delivery and all the compost. So it was completely free for the most part, except for we bought the bags to bag the compost. And so I think it was really fun to get the students engaged, especially throughout the year. It was somewhat difficult to get students engaged, but once they had the opportunity to participate in after school events, then they really, started to see what Green Team was really all about and what they could do within this group. So the takebacks from this was just that it raised a lot of awareness about composting, and it was a great way to build community. We have a lot of next steps. I'll just touch on two, like from the last presentation. They talked about professional development, which is something we thought about too. So we were thinking of applying for a mini grant from Dakota County to do professional development. And we were in contact with an organization called Green Schools National Network, which does professional development for schools. So we thought about this as well. And yeah, I don't think we have enough time to go through some of the next steps, but a lot of future ideas that we hope to incorporate in the future that address sustainability within our school. So thank you.
Thank you, Josie. Some great stuff. And did you say on the Plate to Garden event how much money you fundraised?
But yeah, so we fundraised around $515. So, which actually would cover our professional development, because that was around $500 for a session for staff. So,
oh, very cool.
A lot of things to do to incorporate that money, I think.
Right. Well, that's awesome. And I think that's just another example of if you have a green team and need to fundraise for a specific goal or specific endeavor, that's just one way you can do it, is the Plate to Garden compost program, selling compost to your school community. So what a cool example to share, and all the other examples you shared as well. So thanks so much for being here. And I think we're gonna pop back to Jill. Jill, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Woohoo!
So sorry. Josie, can you stop sharing so I can pull up my presentation? Thank you.
Great. I'm glad it's working. So Jill, again, she's with Kaposia Education Center in South St. Paul, and she's been the leader of the Green Warriors for the past decade. And so she has a lot to share with us here. So thanks for being here, Jill.
Hello, everyone. So sorry about that, but I went during distance learning. Whenever I had students who couldn't somehow communicate, our protocol was always, okay, leave the meeting and come back. So I used my own advice, and it seems to have worked. So yeah, so I've been in charge of our Green Warriors. We started as a student initiative. We had a student, she was actually my student about 10 years ago, who went up to our principal and said, I think we need a group of kids, or think we need something at school to focus on recycling. So then my principal reached out to me. So it all started, and her name was Paige, and she actually picked the name too. So we've been the Green Warriors ever since. So we applied also for one of the grants through Dakota County, and that we came up with some goals for last year. So one thing was to implement recycling and organics collection within our individual classrooms and pods, since we knew we would be eating our meals there due to COVID. I wanted to continue to educate staff and students on how to recycle and compost correctly, because like I think it was our first speaker talked about how there are teachers out there who don't know, teachers, staff who don't know all the rules. So the adults in the buildings need it as well. I wanted to be able to collect the paper towels in the classroom for composting because we were washing our hands so much in there. We wanted to reduce the food waste from breakfast and lunch. And we had already started the Chex recycling for our plastic bags. We wanted to keep that going, and then just, of course, keep our playground clean. So those were our goals for the year. And so I have a little bit more information about each one. So this is what it looked like out in our pods with the containers that were purchased through the grants. So we have in our building, like 3 classrooms share a pod. So these were placed in most of the pods, at least the ones that were used during in-person learning once we were at that stage. So you can see we have the trash, the recycling, and the organics. And then in another slide, you'll see how inside the trash, just like we saw before with the liquids container, there was kids could empty out any liquids like milk or juice into those. And I know it's been brought up already this morning just about, teachers couldn't necessarily be manning these stations to help with sorting. So it was really important that we educated the kids as much as possible. So I had some videos that were not perfect, but they were pushed out at the beginning of the year to just try to explain the steps of, what goes where. So a typical breakfast for us at Kaposia was served in a plastic bag, like the one you see there. And then you see some typical items that were served. So we had to work on, making sure that containers were empty before they were recycled. Not all the yogurt containers looked like that one. That was somebody who really cleaned it out well. But then of course there was the extra step of removing the foil, reminding kids that wrappers were trashed and that only empty milk cartons could be recycled. So all those things in an elementary school are repeated to kids over and over again. And then there was also, like I said, the place for students to do their milk, which I've just cannot believe how little kids really drink milk. That's one thing I would like to work more closely with food service on, is alternatives to milk, because I just can't believe how much milk is wasted in a school. But that's what we taught our kids to do. And, we hope it was successful. I know some days were better than others. At lunch, we were lucky enough to have compostable trays. So that's what the lunch came in. But we soon discovered that the tricky part was that the different food items would be served in different states of plastic. So sometimes there were the little solo cups, and sometimes there'd be bags of veggies. And so in my classroom, I rarely made it out to lunch. So I would like look and see like every day, like, oh, what's being served today? And I would try to say to the kids, like, okay, when you're done with your ketchup, what are you going to do with that? Well, that went straight into trash, because even though it was in one of the little solo cups, it usually had too much residue to be recycled. So it was, this was tricky. At one point, our head custodian was ready just to throw in the towel because the contamination was so high. But we just, with kind of buckling down, we got a little bit better, and we were able to at least sustain the program throughout the year. I just have to check my notes to make sure there wasn't something else I was going to say about that. Yeah, it was just, but it was tricky. And, the smell for part of it, and just enough space in the classrooms out in the pod once we went back to in person. So it wasn't easy, but I'm hoping that next year will be better when we're hopefully in the classroom. So as I mentioned before too, we wanted to be able to collect those paper towels. So every classroom had one of the, I think they call them the Slim Jims, by their sink, and they were able to compost paper towels through there. And I know Allie has told me that that might not be the case forever, that we can collect those paper products, but for now we'll try to do as much as we can, because we have been collecting those paper towels in our restrooms. So I figured we could, reduce what was going to the landfill by capturing those in the classroom. And then we just had so much food, and we couldn't use the share tables like we would normally do in a regular year. So we couldn't send our food back. That was a tricky part, is that even if no one touched it, or if it came just somebody, even with clean hands, if they took it out of their bag and put it into or onto the table, they couldn't go back. So I brought in an extra little refrigerator, and this was the one that was out in my pod. So it was between another 4th grade classroom and myself. And we would just keep that food there. And then we found out that kids would take it for snack, because some kids, we had a really late lunch and some kids wouldn't bring their snack. So they used it for snack. And then on Fridays, I would hopefully remember like 5 minutes before the buses, and I would say, who needs milk? And so I would have kids come to me. We'd actually grab our breakfast bags from the Trex collecting a lot of times, and we'd fill up like 5 or 6 milk, and I would send it home. And it was pretty much, you'd see the same kids. I know another presenter mentioned about being a school with a lot of low socioeconomic families, and that's us too. So you could tell the kids who really appreciated having some milk over the weekend or other snacks. I know that a lot of our extra veggies went to feeding guinea pigs and hamsters and gerbils at home. And I even had a student whose dog loved carrots, so that was the dog's treat. He would get extra carrots. So we just wanted to do anything we could so that it wasn't being thrown into the landfill. And then if there was extras, even after all of that, we had one of our Kids' Choice, which is our after school supervision program. And that person would hand it off to parents when they came to pick up. So I was really happy. We never seemed to have that stigma of kids like, oh, I don't want to be the kid that has to bring food home. They were like, bring it on. And so it saved a lot from going into landfill. And then we've been part of the Trex recycling. One thing I have noticed that are just some things that we had to put into place is that the number one thing was that you have to teach your kids that the bags have to stay clean and dry. They kind of emphasize that through the program. So even starting the year before COVID, I was reminding kids just to take their things out of their bags, or take all their breakfast items out first. And then it had to get away. It had to get off their desks so that they weren't tempted to put their trash back in it. So we came up with just hanging them on the door like that. So the first student would just hang theirs, and then the other kids would add to it. And this made it easier for my Green Warriors, who then went around after breakfast and collected them. And they do pile up really quickly. So that was normal. That would be sitting out in my pod for me to take in. So if you do start Trex like in your school, and I didn't even do it like, in the last presenters talked about having the community add their extra bags. I didn't want it. I had enough as it was. So those are simply the breakfast bags from a school of, about 800. So if you do that, my advice would be get someone to help you who's willing to just haul those bags. I mean, yes, you go to the grocery store. Yes, you go to Cub. These are just some of the places that accept them. But it's just nice having maybe 4 or 5 people who are willing to just, kind of share that responsibility. So just my little tip about Trex. Otherwise, it's really great to see that none of that plastic is going into the landfill. So it is definitely worth it, but some days it's just like, oh, I wish I had help. So, and then another item that we bought were the little trash grabbers that you see the kids holding onto there. So we had some kids work on a cleanup on Earth Day, but then we had to share the playground and be split between our cohorts. So we could never be on the playground at the same time as another class. So I actually had many students who would just volunteer to clean up the playground this spring because they really didn't have a lot to do if they couldn't be swinging or on the slide. So that's how they spent their recess. Sometimes it's just cleaning up the playground, and there was always a mask or two that was left out on the playground. And then we also had some extra recycling and trash containers put out just because there was, I mean, it turned out to be at good timing because I saw a lot of increased use of our basketball court and our playgrounds during COVID, just for places for people to get out and be safe. And according to our head custodian, she was pretty pleased with the way that they were used, meaning that, you know, that recycling wasn't too contaminated. So it was good to know that the community was reading the signs, which is something that I tell my kids all the time. You know, I said, you can learn what we do here at Kaposia, but actually reading those signs is kind of a life skill because, you know, you go to the science museum, they collect things one way, or some restrooms, you can compost your paper towels. So it's just been a matter of trying to just educate over and over. So our next steps involve getting to some of the things that we didn't get to this year. So we hopefully will be able to use our share table. I actually haven't even seen it. This is a picture that Allie sent to me, but we hopefully will be able to use it once we get to our cafeteria. And then we're hoping to get rid of those plastic bags and use those reusable breakfast trays. Those are waiting for us to be used. And then we're hoping to switch to real utensils because we have been using plastic. And I don't know where I heard this. I'm not sure if it was 2 years ago when I attended a Dakota County workshop, but one thing that was recommended is that if you're going to use real utensils and you have to train those kids into switching, is that you do a practice, maybe a couple weeks of collecting the plastic so that when you actually start with those real utensils, they're already used to having those collected someplace. So I just thought that was good advice. So I will make sure that we try that this year if we're able to do so. And then I would like to continue just to educate students and staff and our community. So one way we did that this year was we had a new news show called the KECCO News. And on one of those at the beginning of the year, that our assistant principal actually came to my classroom and we did kind of a cheesy interview, and we used my classroom to show kids how to, or show everybody, staff, students, community, how to recycle and compost. And so that's a live video to YouTube, but I'm not going to play it now, but just so you can see an example of that. So I think that's about everything we got through. So there's my contact information. And I guess I don't have my email there, but I can't see it if it's there. I can't remember if I put it there. Oh yeah, I did. Sorry, it's hard. I'm trying to figure out where to put the Zoom bar so that it's not in my way. So, all right. So
Thank you, Jill. Great information. I loved the advice too on the debagging. I think that's something, even if we're not doing the Trex plastic bag collection, that we could all take to heart maybe in the cafeteria. I've seen some schools give advice on sort on the tray before you come up to the sorting station. So that includes the debagging of getting the carrots out of the plastic bag and putting a pile of organics next to all your wrappers. And then when you get up to the station, you can just go 1, 2, 3 instead of standing and holding up the line. So I think that's great advice. And just, yes, the fact that it is a life skill and that through your work with Green Warriors, you're helping to teach that. So it's just really, really powerful stuff. So thank you for being here, Jill, and sharing that with us. And I think we have time for a few questions. So I know Jenny's been compiling a few of those. So Jenny, do we have a few questions we want to get to?
Yes, and we do have a few questions about the where to get some of the products, like the share table with the cooler bins and the compostable clamshells. We'll get those brands out to you. in the follow-up. So don't worry about that. And if you have other questions about items, we can put that in too. I have a few questions for Josie. How many kids are at Fit Academy and how does the flavor station work?
So there are around 300 kids at Fit Academy and around 50 staff. So the flavor station we actually got at the beginning of 2020, I believe, and that it was right before COVID started. So we didn't incorporate it this year, but from the so yeah, the state, it's nice because the flavors are all in like those containers that you can just wash and reuse and refill. So we have like bulk spices and then you can just refill it once it stops. But I assume when we do incorporate it, it'll just be like near like a condiments, the condiment section within the lunchroom. And yeah, that's what I know so far, but more to come once we do actually use it.
And it is a wasted food prevention best practice too, to allow students to kind of customize their meals. So that came out of Hannah with our Green Core projects, research on wasted food prevention best practices. So we typically were seeing it or piloted it in middle schools and high schools, but we are doing it in an elementary school this grade year. So it might work well at all levels. But yeah, if you need more information on that, feel free to reach out to me as well.
Great. And we learned from our students through that Green Core member too of even tahini, like kids were bringing their own spices to school at the high school level, put some tahini on their meals, which I didn't know about. And now I have at my house and I love it. Okay. So the other question is for Allie. Is there a commercial residential compost collection for schools in Dakota County?
Yes, there is. And I actually put a link to our webpage too that might be a helpful start in just kind of thinking through if you're going to start collecting organics, what that looks like. Is it food to people? Is it food to animals? And if it is composting at a compost facility, there's a whole page we have on that. So that might be helpful to visit as well. And I can put that in the follow-up notes in case people can't track it down in the chat or it got buried in the chat. But yes, we do have haulers collecting organics to bring it to commercial composting facilities in Dakota County. So that is an option.
Great, and that's it for now.
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again here and we'll move on to our next topic. Alrighty. All right, so we're in our breakout discussion. So we can stand up if we need and take a quick stretch break. I know we've been sitting an hour, so feel free to take that time to stretch or get a refill. Breakout time right now is a chance to network, meet staff from other schools and brainstorm ideas together. So it should be pretty exciting. But I first want to ask a poll question as people are getting up and getting moving to stretch it out or getting a refill. So our poll question that Jenny will pull up for us. Does your school have a student green team? Looks like about 60% of everyone's voted so far. So maybe we'll just wait a few more seconds. All right. Well, it looks pretty split actually. Majority do have a student green team, so that's exciting to see. But then some do not, or maybe it's not called a student green team. Maybe it's a different club that could take on some of those tasks, and some aren't sure. So that's just a helpful base to know kind of where we're at already. And we know that The breakout discussion today will be focused on building upon some of the inspiring ideas we just heard from the green team leaders and applying this to our own work. So based on our registration numbers, we'll have 18 separate breakout rooms. We might have less depending when we get in there, but
We
your
will have
group should be
12.
numbered. 12,
Allie,
okay.
We'll have 12.
Thanks, Jenny. So we're going to group our breakout rooms by job title, or just role. So are you food service? Are you buildings and maintenance? Administrator and teachers are kind of our 4 different areas. And then you'll be able to network with people in your same role at the school to kind of brainstorm ideas. And we're going to focus on these 3 questions. So we'll have approximately 7 minutes to discuss each question. The first question, what are your current challenges to reducing more waste? So as this question's focused more on waste reduction, not necessarily recycling. So I think it's helpful to consider, what are you currently throwing away in large quantities? Maybe it's things like the paper boats used for breakfast in the classroom. Maybe it's food, liquids, markers. It could be a myriad of other things, but that just might help get thinking on what is the stuff that we're throwing in the trash. And then in addition, there might be certain times of the year where more materials are used than others. So maybe an end of year locker clean out, or other times of the year that might spark some ideas. And then secondly, just brainstorming, what are your current challenges to collecting clean, recycling, organic? So free of contamination, reflecting on maybe a certain time of the day or year, or other items. Maybe there's a certain product that causes a lot of confusion that you're seeing contaminate those 2 bins. And then our last question is just related to, how could students support your work in reducing waste and recycling efforts? So considering how students could help address the challenges we've identified. So I've heard a lot of unique solutions already involving students and being part of the solution. So students making videos on how to properly recycle products, like Angie shared with the paper boxes, or returning reusable boats maybe back to the cafeteria from the classroom, or even sorting on the tray before coming up to the station. So we're looking at our 2 first question challenges and then thinking through, how could students help address maybe some of these? And Jenny will let us know in the chat when we're in our breakout rooms, when it's time to kind of start thinking about the next question. And then in the last 2 minutes as a group, if you could highlight, it's going to be a Google slide, so I'll show you that next, but just highlight maybe 1 or 2 favorite ideas, and then Jenny will look at a few of those ideas to share with the larger group when we come back together. So you'll be notified in the breakout rooms when they're ending with a countdown clock.
Disposables myself. Recording on. And if you order out just once, they're almost unavoidable. They always send me a little sport kit or napkins or just the containers with the food. I never ask for those, but they come anyways, and sometimes they're necessary. The problem is that these things do not just go away, and just because you don't think about them does not mean they will not affect you in some way. The single-use disposables really started in the 80s and took off in the 90s. And one of the reasons this practice is so common is because we teach and normalize this behavior with our students and kids in their schools. Next slide, please. So imagine all the schools in the US. They actually serve 5 billion meals to students every year. So billion with a B. Many schools serve these meals on single-use food service ware, such as polystyrene foam. Polystyrene is the fancy science name for what most people call styrofoam, but it is polystyrene foam if you want to get technical. Some of folks have been moving to these molded fiber trays that we'll see, and we'll talk about both of these later. Due to their perceived convenience and low upfront costs, these are often used, but it is a perceived convenience. And unsurprisingly, this creates a lot of waste. So a hypothetical elementary school with 500 students that serve just 1 meal per student every school day would spend about $6,000 on 81,000 polystyrene foam trays every year. These 81,000 foam trays would weigh over 2,000 pounds, which it weighs about as much as a 2015 Mitsubishi Mirage car. And I actually priced this car out. It only costs $2,000 more than buying those 80,000 trays. I prefer the car personally. But styrofoam is by its nature is very light. So talking about its weight is really capturing how much waste this is. But if you were to stack those trays all on top of one another, they would be taller than a 40-story building. And that's just from one elementary school that's doing one meal per day. We often concentrate on the waste because we can visualize it. And I have a lot more experience in the waste, but there's actually more to the story than just the waste impacts of these disposables. Next slide, please. So CEH has heard from school district staff and teachers, families from across the country who are alarmed about the growing amount of disposables in their schools, the toxic chemicals found in these products, and the impacts that they have on our health and community, which has only been compounded by the pandemic. Moreover, most people do not know what chemicals are in these products. Consider your polystyrene tray, your styrofoam tray, and consider your molded fiber clamshells, like I saw that Jill used in her presentation. Do you know what's actually in these items? Think about it for a hot sec. Let's move on to the next slide. I'm going to start with polystyrene first, and we'll just be, and then we'll move to molded fiber. So the styrene in polystyrene is reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen. So carcinogen means a chemical that can cause cancer. For example, tobacco smoke in cigarettes is a carcinogen. This language that the scientists have used here means scientists believe that styrene gives you cancer. That's pretty much, they have to use this very tempered language, but the take home would be styrene can give you cancer. And from the waste end, polystyrene is what I would call a hot mess. It can't economically be recycled and usually ends up in the landfills or in the waterways as litter. And it only gets used for about 20 minutes in this kind of food service ware realm. It doesn't have a long life, and it has a very long waste life, 500 years to decompose kind of thing. It's also noisy. That squeak drives me bonkers. Like just hearing that styrene tray, cringeworthy. And it doesn't make our food look good. So if you're worried about food waste, a good thing is you eat first with your eyes. And so if you make the food look better, you're probably going to get some folks to eat it. And when you present it on polystyrene white, not appetizing. It's also one of these things that it's completely not needed for our functioning lives. Like, a lot of stuff can have some bad, health effects that are pretty useful. Polystyrene, we just don't need it. There are so many other options that are viable. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there, even though I can go on about polystyrene. But what I really want to talk to you all about is this new molded fiber. So can we go to the next slide, please? Cool. All right, I'm going to try to pronounce this word because it's really hard. Per and polyfluoroalkyl. We just call them PFAS because it just makes my life so much easier. So we got these new paper products that are coming out, and they're healthy. They're made from paper. They're way better than styrofoam. Well, there's always something, right? Paper absorbs water and grease, so the companies wanted to add something to prevent this minor inconvenience. And I do say minor because, again, these things only get used for about 20 minutes. And so the PFAS substance are something often added to these paper products. PFAS are added to disposable food service ware to enhance that grease and water resistance of the product. They have other things that can do this. This is not the only game in town. You might have heard of PFAS because many states are banning them completely. Maine just banned PFAS, and other states are working on banning them from packaging and cookware. California is working on banning it from packaging and cookware. The PFAS really came out from the Teflon coating on cookware, and that stuff was bad for the environment where it's being produced, and also got into people's bodies. So they call them PFOAs, but the PFAS, there's over 9,000 different similar chemicals that we assume are doing the same kind of thing because they're chemically very similar. So you can, if it says PFOA free, it might have an alternative that is not so great. And in case that isn't enough scary factoids, here's a couple more that will keep you up at night. The carbon fluorine bond, which is part of the fluorination, is one of the strongest in chemistry. And this is why they have the nickname forever chemicals, because they do not break down in your body. They don't really break down in compost. They go into the water, don't break down there, and they can actually get into the air. They just don't break down. It's definitely in the US drinking water supply. The Guardian just came out with an article about PFAS in the water, and it's found in 98% of all Americans when tested. And the primary risk exposure is believed to be the diet. So yeah, not great. Can we go to the next slide, Ping? So a lot of you are like, don't worry, my food service ware, my molded fibers, it's fine. I purchased it. My purchaser said it was great. Well, in almost all the molded fiber food service wares that we tested, and this was in 2021, February, 86% of all the molded fibers tested had a high fluorine content, which is indicative likely had been treated with PFAS or in its composition. Availability of PFAS-free options are expected to increase as purchasers like y'all selves are demanding safer options. Next slide, please. And so I'm super glad that Dakota County offers commercial composting, but these compostable products might not necessarily pass the rigor of composting. If they have PFAS in them, the Bioproduct Institute, BPI, says they don't want them no more. And CMA, which is the Compost Manufacturing Alliance, also says they don't want them no more. So it is a time to kind of phase these chemicals out of the food service ware that is deemed compostable, because even if it's made from paper and theoretically compostable, if it has those PFAS, they're not going to want them or take them. Next slide, please. Oh, go back really quick, Allie. Sorry, I had one more point. If you are using these molded fiber things and don't have commercial composting, they do create methane in the landfill. So it's kind of not the best solution to replacing polystyrene if you don't have commercial composting. So we really recommend that you use other products if you don't have commercial composting than compostable paper products. Thanks, Allie. Can we go to the next slide? So these two products have these kind of health issues that have been linked with them. And this isn't just from the CEH, but from a wide variety of folks who've done studies on it. So I'm just going to give you a hot sec to look at that very annoying list. I also want to remind you that these items are found in many of our day-to-days, but are not necessary for our society to function properly. The take-home scientists have found many single-use food service products contain hazardous chemicals that have been linked to a variety of health complications, including hormone system disruption, a range of cancers, behavioral and learning disorders, and much more. Children are especially vulnerable to these toxins and can be exposed by handling or eating food that was served on the products that contain them. Hooray. Sorry, next slide. I got solutions. Stay with me. We're close. Again, I said I was the EDC food programs coordinator. The EDC stands for endocrine disrupting chemicals. Endocrine is a hormone. For the EDC chemicals, a little goes a long way. For any hormone mimicking or blocking chemical, a little goes a long way. Acute exposure is bad, but having small incremental exposures over a long period of time, most scientists would agree that's worse. And so if you're like, serving food on a tray that has PFAS, and some of that PFAS migrate into the food, and then the kids eat it every single lunch day, that's gonna cause more problems Yeah. So CEH is focusing on creating healthier schools and safer eating by reducing these hormone disrupting chemicals in school-age children. We have prioritized stopping children exposure to hormones disrupting because it's a critical role and hormones play in human development. All right, let's go to solutions. What do we do? All of this is a lot of public health, chemistry, and waste, and it is depressing. I want to acknowledge this is not a fun topic. And all y'all want to do is probably just feed a nice healthy meal to the students so they can go about their merry way. Well, we do have some solutions for you. CEH and members of the Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council has developed a set of purchasing recommendations for sustainable food service wares. And I will make sure to share a link to everyone that will have this. I embedded it in my PowerPoint, but I'll get it to y'all in a second. Our next resource, if you go to the next slide, is that you have purchasing power. You can send a message to the producers of these products that you want PFAS-free products and you want ones that have been independently tested. You can literally just do that before you do any purchasing contract signs. Just be like, I want this and I want you to show me this before I give you all this money. You can also figuratively do that just by buying products that are PFAS-free. CEH has a public database where you can check on the products we have tested, and we will share these slides and the link in it. So the link at the bottom of this slide, you click on it and it will send you to our public database, and it's very clearly labeled low or no fluorine, which is the PFAS, and then in red is high fluorine, and you don't want the red stuff. I also want to mention that we made this chart. The untested molded fiber, which might have PFAS, the trays actually cost more for the untested one than the ones we know are PFAS free. So if cost is a problem for you, all you need to do is be directed to the ones that are low cost and also PFAS free. So you definitely want to check out our public database here. If you're curious about an item that isn't on the public database, we have over 600 items on the public database, but if you have that one item that isn't, you send me an email, ben@ceh.org, which is at the end of this slide, and we can figure out a way to get that tested for you so you know. Okay, next slide. There's also a new certification coming out called Green Screen Certified. They've worked with fabrics, furniture, and cleaning products before, and they just check along the whole line of production that there are no harm chemicals in making these products. And we are making this for food service ware. It will be out by the end of the year, but really keep your eyes out in September. That's when we expect to see some stuff. And again, if you go to our toolkit, we can get you on the website to let you know when it's released. Speaking of the toolkit, we have made a toolkit. But before that, CEH does not want a school to move from a disposable to another disposable. Disposable food service ware is not sustainable in any sense of the word. It also teaches youth the wrong thing. It normalizes that things are disposable. When you throw something away, it doesn't really go away. It just goes someplace else. And that can have impacts on the students' health and the land around the students. So, oh yeah, moreover, schools have used reusables in the past. The normal is reusable. It is not this disposable situation we found ourselves in for the last 30 years. CEH has just released a toolkit and a planning guide on ditching disposables in schools. We know that's a huge lift. It's a really big lift, which is why we developed this planning guide to assist the process. It has the audience of both like the teacher champion, but also at the district level. It's actually the planning guide portion is getting released today. But if you need more detail. So what's in this planning guide? I noticed that some folks talked about waste audit. We made NGS aligned waste audit lessons, kind of geared for 4th grade, but you can upscale it all the way up to high schoolers. I've definitely done waste audits with high schoolers, and it was very successful. We also have a visual waste audit, which I would probably do with 3rd or 2nd graders, given the opportunity. But the hands-on digging through the trash, I think, really calls students to action once they see how much waste is coming from the school cafeteria. Food waste is actually one of the big drivers for that. So we are having 4 waste audit lessons. There's a jigsaw lesson, and there's also a kind of a climate change draw along that will all be released. And again, I helped develop those. So if you have questions or interest in that, I'd be happy to do that. We have cost calculators. We have how to form the PTA, the green team. We have how to get the dishwashing machine situated. We have how to hold that stakeholder meetings. It's kind of like this omnibus planning guide with everything that I could think of. But I am just one person, and so we want to start the conversation with people. If you're interested and you find something that was really helpful, that would be good to let us know, let me know about that. But this planning guide is to hope to move to reusables. Yeah, let's go to the next slide before I get too much on the toolkit. I do acknowledge every school is different and every district is different. So we can't just say that reusables are going to be a more cost-effective, the cheaper option. But let me give you an example. Imagine that K through 5 elementary school with 500 students who have that one meal a day on the styrofoam trays. Let's throw in a sport kit because they probably want to eat something with it. In 180 days of that school, with the sport kit, the total price comes to about $7,000 a year for things that you use for about 20 minutes and then throw away. If you want, compare that same school and they got 3 sets, which is really a lot for a school, of the stainless steel trays and forks. They spend, the upfront cost is around $8,500 for that. Throw in some napkin dispensers and straw dispensers for good measure. But you only have to pay that once, and then maybe a $500 a year for napkins and straws, and then that money starts paying back. That would be, to me, fairly cost effective. Our calculators say that you'd save about $6,000 a year just from the food service wares. But Ben, what about that washing machine? Yeah, that's a thing. Getting those dishes cleaned is a whole task, and like a dish machine can be anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000, and the kitchen renovation, don't get me started. So we still think, at least at CH, and I think a lot of folks would agree, it's way better to pay someone to do dishes, to do meaningful work, than to pay for something you have to throw away. There's a lot of hidden cost in those disposable, like waste hauling is a hidden cost, but also like the students' health as well. And again, you don't necessarily have to go for stainless steel. That's like one of the most expensive options. But let's go to the next slide. Plastic-free restaurants has made this really cool offer. They're willing to pretty much buy your reusables if you want to buy them. The organizer says, bring me all the schools. Everyone who's interested, I want them to email me. My bandwidth is high right now, and I just want to do this. They originally were trying to work with restaurants and found that it was hard to work with restaurants. So they're trying to move over to a different institution, and schools works great for them. They will pay the difference from one set of single-use items to one set of reusable items. To make that clear, take our 500 student elementary. Let's say they spend about $40 a day on those styrofoam trays and want to move to reusable stainless steel. Steel trays cost about $6 per tray, which would mean $3,000 for just a single set. Plastic-free restaurants would pay you the difference, which is $2,960 to buy those steel trays. And if you need multiple sets, the founder, John, said he'd be willing to work with y'all. So again, go to he's very responsive. Go to his website, check out his email. If you want me to set up a digital meet and greet, I'd be happy to do so too. Cool. So has this been done before? Yup. One of the examples is a high school called Bishop O'Dowd with about 1,200 students, and it replaced their single-use plates with reusable baskets. No dishwashing machine needed to do this. Annually, they ended up saving about $6,500. They used 100,000 fewer disposable items and prevented about 3,500 pounds of waste, which is really cool. Let's check out the district level. So Austin Independent School District has 75,000 students with 125 schools, and they just have a really powerful powerhouse nutrition executive chef named Dana Gupta, and she just made it a thing that sustainability was part of the district. Good. They're speaking next, so I'm not going to steal too much of their thunder. But look at some of these. Look at some of these items that they do. They do reusable serviceware, bulk milk, expanding self-serving options, minimal packaging, from scratch cooking, and family-style dining. Yeah, but before that, I just want to say, if you're interested in transitioning, we need more case studies at CEH, and I'd be happy to help. And I've spent a lot of time thinking through this stuff. You need a dishwashing machine audit, we can help you out. You need some lesson plans, we got you. So we have a lot of resources, and I want to invite you to email me at ben@ceh.org, and we will try to work together to maybe get some case studies and maybe get reusables. Remember, the thing is, if you were thinking about transitioning, consider it a marathon and not a sprint, and start small. So Allie, how am I doing on time?
Yep, no, we're good.
Okay, cool. So
Thank you
I'll
so
check out some of
much.
those questions in the chat, and then I'm going to toss it back to Allie. Thank you, Allie.
Thank you, Ben. I received it. I really appreciate that. It's just fascinating stuff. And just kind of hammers home the importance of transitioning away from disposables as much as possible and towards reusable options. And part of the toolkit that's really interesting that CEH put out recently as well is when you're transitioning to dispose or away from disposables, making sure the product you're transitioning into, like a reusable product, isn't also toxic, is something that I kind of maybe we forgot to think about. So making sure we're not using polycarbonate trays if we can avoid those. And melamine can have toxic qualities. So just thinking through a lot of that stuff is also on their toolkit, and transitioning to a safe reusable product is best. So thanks again, Ben, and just really, really great stuff. Next, we will have our next speaker, Diane. So Diane is with us from Austin Independent School District. She serves as the executive chef. And as executive chef, she creates new recipes, helps plan menus, maintains kitchen equipment, trains staff, works with students and the community teaching cooking and nutrition classes, and oversees the catering and concessions programs. Prior to this position, she created the in-house catering program for the district and was a school cafeteria manager. Diane spent 10 years working with the Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts in Palm Beach, Florida, Austin, Texas, and Hawaii. After studying at the Culinary Institute of America in New York, Diane has had an interest in sustainability and the environment since she founded her school's Environmental Awareness Club as a 90s kid in elementary school. Reduce, reuse, recycle was the earliest slogan she remembers. She resides in Austin, Texas, with her 2 middle school kids, her husband, and her puppy Pepper, and enjoys entertaining at home, eating out, volunteering, and walking around neighborhoods to look at houses. With a passion for cooking, reducing waste, and community involvement, her position as the executive chef of a progressive, inclusive school district is her dream job. So let's welcome Diane with us today.
Hi. That was a very long intro. I feel like I need to tighten that up, so sorry.
I think it was great.
So yes, I'm here from Austin, and I'm going to show you kind of some of the things we're doing that very much piggyback on things Ben was talking about. We are a work in progress. We are kind of doing a lot of those pieces, and so I'm going to go over some of what we're working on. Okay, next slide. So who we are, just for scale, we're a pretty large district. I don't know how it compares to where y'all are, but we serve 75,000 students. It's a really diverse district. We serve about 75,000 meals a day, 13 million a year, and that's breakfast, lunch, after school meals, all of that. We have about 700 members of our team in all the kitchens, and we have about 125 campuses, and 50 of our schools do breakfast in the classroom. So I don't know if that's happening where you are, but I'll get into that a little bit, how to make that more sustainable. Okay, next. We don't have a commissary kitchen or a central kitchen. We prepare all the food in individual kitchens. We're trying to be progressive with our menus. We've got a vegetarian option every day, and we're working to not make that just a cheese something, but actual protein, beans, trying to work in some alternatives to just cheese. And then we're working, just like so many other districts, trying to do more scratch cooking and bring in some global flavors. And we have a salad bar at all of our schools, elementary through high school. Everybody has a salad bar. So next. This is just our mission, just beyond putting food out on trays. So our mission is to support the achievement of all students by expanding food access, serving healthy, tasty meals, and providing learning opportunities about nutrition, cultural foodways, and the food system. So in the cafeteria and then outside the cafeteria. Next. So this is just kind of a lot of things like Ben was going over. We all know that stuff takes forever to go away. Some of it really never goes away. And we were pushed kind of to really ignite change because our city is doing that. So we're really fortunate that in Austin, they have their own goals about trash. And so you can see here, we're trying to reduce landfill waste by 90% by 2040. And 2040 actually starts to feel kind of close as we're in the 2020s. So we got to get cracking. Next slide. These are some of the things that we work on to improve sustainability: more scratch cooking, self-serve options, reusable serviceware, minimal packaging, family style dining, and bulk milk. So I'm going to dig into some of these things and how they relate to things you can do in your own schools. Next slide. So the first thing is reusable serviceware. We have a few schools that are doing fully zero waste, but we have 50% of our schools right now doing at least the tray. So that's our big thing. We are off of styrofoam. Nobody uses styrofoam, and they're either using compostable or the reusables. So yes, and then every new school that we make, we're making them zero waste, meaning they don't use milk cartons, they don't use juice cartons, and everything is on these. You can see the picture in the middle. It's like basically a nacho boat, but reusable. So that's a big initiative. Go to the next one. So this is exactly what we do at Zero Waste School. So when we're designing new schools, we make sure that we have everything to accommodate bulk milk. So we have the dispensers with the cups. We've done away with juice this year at all of our schools. So we have no more cartons. We're doing whole fruit. And then moving towards compostable materials occasionally in these zero waste schools if we need it, but otherwise they're using all the forks and knives, and we have dishwashers, salad bar with tongs, and we have plans for bulk cereal, but we haven't figured out. Everyone who's in this world knows you can't let a kid just keep cranking cereal and filling up their bowl. So we haven't gotten there yet, but we're working on it. Next slide. The advantages to reusables, Ben touched on a lot of this, but obviously less waste, less trash, less compost. Garbage is still garbage. Same idea as Ben mentioned. We just think it's nicer for our kids to eat off of a real tray than eating off of soggy paper, plastic, that kind of thing. It's less for our procurement team and our warehouse to stock, order, keep on hand. If those boxes full of trays take up a lot of food on our trucks, and when we've got 125 schools, the routes get full. It's a lot to deliver. So if we can move to things that are just staying in the kitchen, it cuts down on all those additional trips and the space in the trucks. And then from a custodial standpoint, there's a lot less messes with a plastic tray than our compostable tray, which it's great that it's compostable, but it means that it breaks down. So when it's wet, it starts to break down, that kind of thing. Next slide. Some challenges. So this is the big part for all of you, what's really involved. Our schools range anywhere from being 90 years old, and my kids went to a school that's 90 years old, to just being built this year. So some have dish machines, some don't. Some can never have a dish machine. They don't have grease traps. They're not set up for that. They were built, so decades ago. So that's definitely a challenge. The first investment is the dish machine. Storage, we have a lot of schools that are old. They're those schools that are built 90 years ago. And some of them that we have managed to get dish machines in, we don't have a lot of space to put all the other things. Where do we store hundreds of trays, cups, utensils, and then buying the equipment for that? There is initial costs. Ours is $3.15 for the tray. And then you do need to consider the soap, the sanitizer, someone to kind of manage all of that for your machines. And there is labor involved in washing the dishes and putting them away. You need to let them air dry, things like that. Next slide. So some of our solutions. I don't know if y'all have central warehouses, but when I got this job and I started digging through, I found all of the things that were taken out of the schools in the 80s and 90s when we switched to single-use materials. And now I'm putting that stuff back into the schools again. That picture in the middle is a brand new school. You can tell by the countertops, it's super clean, really modern. And there's our 70s colored trays back in the mix again. And same on the other one, it's those kind of retro colors, but they serve the purpose and it saves you money. So it's worth investigating in your own district and even outside if people have this stuff around, putting it back into use again. Next slide. Here's a breakdown of costs, and you've seen similar slides, but it's just showing that if you invest one time, you can stop spending money essentially. There is an initial startup cost, but then you're using that same tray or those same cups day after day, year after year. And it really doesn't take long to make up for the price. And this isn't even including the time, like, again, I said, like the procurement team looking for those contracts every year, the warehouse guys loading in paper cups, trays, all of those things every day to restock. And it's that many fewer things on your inventory line for the managers to, you know, track each month. Okay, next slide. Similar sentiment as Ben. So I just wrote this out. We value people over the use of single-use disposables. It's better to pay an employee to do a job that's worthwhile and support the greater good than spend money on things we perpetually throw away. So of course there's a cost of labor, but there's also a cost to buying a warehouse full of paper goods that you're truly going to throw away within days or weeks. So that's how we kind of sell it to our community. Okay, so another initiative is bulk milk. So we have these at our zero waste schools. Again, it's an investment, but you don't have cartons. You can buy bulk milk in larger amounts. You don't need to rotate as quickly as you run through all the crates with storage and things like that. And we buy the cups, and we like it because I don't know how it is elsewhere, but kids don't have to have milk anymore in Texas, at least. I'm not sure if that's national, but it's just about the components. So it's no longer like you have to take a milk. So if a kid doesn't want a milk, they don't have to take it. And also if they do want milk and they just want a bit, they can fill their cup up just as much as they want without wasting a whole carton. I'll show you the next slide. There's just an example of a kid doing it themselves. Kids in the elementaries really love doing this, and it's a really good life skill for kids. We have to teach them early to help themselves, listen to their body. Do you want milk? Do you not want milk? How much do you want? Only take what you're gonna drink, that kind of thing. It's a good, gives them a little bit of independence. They get excited to get their own milk and their own water. So that's just fun for us. Next slide. Let's see. So here on the bottom is kind of how we set things up. We tried doing bulk milk for our BIC, and honestly, we couldn't figure it out. We're a really big district. We serve really big schools, and the labor and waste wasn't working for us last year. So we're not actually doing it this year, but I just wanted to put it out there. If you've got a smaller system, it might work for you. We found it hard to track how long the milk had been in the container. Are we refilling a little bit more? When do we throw the milk out? And then distributing one more thing to all of the classrooms was a real challenge for us. But I would like to keep this slide because it might inspire someone else to try to figure out a way to make it work. And we use these air pumps to do it. Next slide. So we couldn't get the air pump built to work for BIC, but we do use reusables for all the other items. So I know that COVID made everything crazy, but even during COVID, we kind of switched to this system and we've been doing it. We put everything in coolers, thermal bags, and then a clear plastic bag that we wipe out at the end of service. And so we're not bagging up in plastic anything. Yes. So here's the picture. We put the milks all go in the cooler, the fruit goes in the bag. Again, we're off of fruit juice, so we're using whole fruit. This year, there'll be 2 fruits in there. And then we use this bag here. This is the only thing that gets tossed at the end. It's a bag that we can put in our pancake or our hoagie and seal it up the day before, pop it in the oven. It's oven safe. And then that's the only trash that's created. Everything else is in those bags. We supply gloves for the teachers to distribute in the classroom. Next slide. Oh, did I get you twice? There we go. Another initiative we're doing is family style dining. We only have this at one school right now, but basically we serve family style, and we put it down on the table, and it's that same idea that kids can serve themselves. They can choose what they'd like. We do have one of our staff walk around the table and make sure that they have their components, and we, suggest you need a fruit on your tray, things like that. But we kind of took this idea, and this year I'm trying to really move it towards our lines too, where we're going to start doing more with tongs, and stop putting everything in individual containers. If these preschoolers can do it, our middle and high school kids, they can do it. It's good life skills, sharing, waiting your turn, all of those things. Next slide. So afterwards, this is in our zero waste cafe. We eat together and then we clean together. Another good life skill to have. So afterwards, the kids clear off their own trays, compost, recycling, a little bit of regular trash. We have a scullery. They can spray off their own trays. We usually get the 5th graders to help with that, rack them, and then they go into the dishwasher. So it's really getting them young to understand that it shouldn't be any different than what you do at your house. You use a plate and you use it again. Next slide. So how to get started. The biggest thing is, I want to mention just first, is we really had the support of our community and our city. They're pushing us and we're pushing them to move these initiatives forward. So a lot of the things we were able to do were because these dishwashers and zero waste kitchens were part of bonds. And so we definitely had an advantage in living in a really progressive city that wanted this. So we had a leg up there. And I know that that's not everywhere in the country, but just wanted to, push the idea of starting small. You don't have to do everything all at once. We're not doing all these initiatives that I just mentioned at all of our schools. We have to slowly get each school, like, what can we do? So the first thing was getting rid of styrofoam, transitioning to that compostable tray. Again, we already had commercial composting, so that was kind of an easy transition for us. Next was do the thing that you think will make the biggest impact. So I would suggest finding the school that serves the most kids, invest in the dishwasher in that school, get that school on reusables, and then you're going to be really able to chart that progress and the savings and share that with your community and make it worth it doing at the rest of your schools. And another idea that I've kind of stolen from the environmental movement is you don't have to be extreme and do all the things. You don't have to be, for environmental, you don't have to be a crazy tree hugger using black toothpaste and, all those kind of things and never using a plastic bag. You can still make a difference with small changes. So what can you do? Can you start with reusable utensils? Can you switch from packaged juice to whole fruit? Not every day, a few times a week, and save the packaging. Can you put your ketchup in squirt bottles instead of 2-ounce containers? Can you replace anything that you're doing single serve with tongs? Hopefully with COVID, we can move past all of this, but I know we were putting apples in tiny offer versus serve containers, and it's just not necessary. We can teach kids to use a tong. It's not going to change the timing all that much. Next slide. So here's just some sort of a flow chart that we put together of traying up food versus putting the food directly on the tray. And this is those kind of small changes you can make and kind of how to sell it to your community and your staff. It takes a long time to put 3 pickles in a 2-ounce container with a lid. And that time can be used later on to wash the dishes instead. Also, you're going to save money. Again, saving money on those. It might only be a 2 cents for the container and the lid, but we know that that adds up day after day, school year, so through a whole school year. Put that money into your labor costs to use the reusables and dry the stuff and move things. Those things take time, but let's use our staff time, our labor hours in a more constructive way. The expense of it, just flat out, if we can stop using just the containers we put ketchup in, we can buy that many more reusable forks and spoons. It's like a very direct connection with all these things. And then as far as hygiene goes, I know for our schools and most elementaries, the kids are washing their hands before they come into the lunch line. So I know that Ben can probably, dig out the real numbers on this because he's provided them to me, but the science shows that COVID and other things are not being spread this way. If the kids wash their hands, they can use a tong and then eat that fruit with their hands later on. And then, these are our kids. We want to show them the right way to do things. We don't want to get them in a pattern that it's constantly single use and throwing away. So if we can start them young, that's the best way. And it's a better feel for the kids. It feels like home. It feels like a restaurant. And that's the experience that we want to provide. Next slide. So this is just ways to reach me if you need more details. I'm happy to provide whatever I can. I've sent Allie a lot of information after another presentation. We don't have a ton of data because last year was a mess, but as far as resources, brands of items that we use, anything like that, I'm happy to help you out with. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Diane. And I have a few examples from our grant schools on what they did for reusables, but maybe we'll just take a few quick questions for our presenters, just in case Diane and Ben have to head out. So any quick questions that came in, Jenny?
Yep. So one was about plastic bag collection. So I know that a few people are responding to that. Since those weren't the presentations now, I'll leave that. So one was for Ben. So when you mentioned the not washing the reusable baskets, are they not washed at all, or is it just not washed in the dishwasher?
All right, I probably misspoke. They're not washed in a dishwashing machine. They use a 3-sink system to get the utensils, and they just kind of soak these baskets that are porous in them, and then they can reuse them for the next day. It's just an easy workaround that doesn't take a huge big machine to do. It's maybe an extra hour of staff time a day.
Okay, thank you. And then for Diane, a few questions. For talking about refillable cups, probably the milk dispensers and water or juice. Is spilling a problem with these cups?
Spilling's not really a problem because you can choose your cup size. And so we chose kind of bigger than the kid might get. And so it's not really teetering. And initially there's spills, but just like anything else, they get used to it. It's really not like we're mopping milk off the floor every day. There's some spills when they start and then they get the hang of it.
I mean, I spill my coffee just about every day. So what are you going to do? One last question then for you. Do you have water or just milk available for the dispensers?
We all, in the zero waste schools, we always have water also. And then in the other schools, it's a requirement to offer water some kind of way. So we always have water and milk.
Great. That is it for questions then. And just to note, Kim had some questions about milk offer versus serve. So we'll follow up with everyone and put some more information in the notes following. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Ben and Diane. Just really great, inspiring stuff. Thanks so much for being here. I'm going to just share my screen to show you a few of the initiatives that Dakota County Schools did in 2020, which are pretty exciting. So just a few highlights from last year's program. I'm just concentrating on their reusable products implementation to replace single-use disposable items. And 2020 was the first year of our new grant program. And the first year reusable items were eligible for purchase for reimbursement. So reusable items, when I say that, I mean, metal spoons instead of plastic spoons, to eliminate the repeated need for resources and materials to be produced, transported, and disposed. So even though we know, like we've heard, recycling is important, it's best to eliminate products and avoid individual and disposable packaging whenever possible to save money on both the products and the waste hauling, but also decrease packaging waste and simplify the whole process for students to sort. So maybe your school uses pre-portioned cups similar to this photo, but we know that it can be confusing. So the food inside the cups is organics, the larger plastic cup that's clean is recyclable, and then the other plastic cup that's not clean is trash. So effectively communicating all of this information to students is much more likely more difficult and can lead to confusion, contamination, and then therefore a slowed down sort process. So if we can serve directly on the tray or use reusables as much as possible, it can make it smoother for students and everyone else involved. So just a quick poll question. Does your school use reusable metal utensils? Just curious where people are at. We'll just do maybe 20 seconds for this poll, just to stay on time here. Okay, so it looks like about a quarter do use metal utensils right now. And then some are wishing they did, whereas about half don't currently use reusables. You can see those poll results there. All right, thanks for your feedback. So 5 schools in our grant implemented reusable utensils in 2020. That included the washing equipment, so the flatware racks and the bus tubs and a cart to collect them as well. And as you can see, the schools eliminated a lot of plastic from the trash. So for example, Kaposia Education Center is going to be keeping out 137,000 plastic utensils out of the trash every year. And all of those other numbers are really impressive as well. So it does make a big difference, and also just makes the whole process easier, one less contaminant to end up in recycling or organics. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency did a case study. I've linked it here with 2 Minnetonka middle schools a while back, but they do have some great best practices about collecting utensils first in the sorting line before sorting the rest of your materials, and also some great cost savings of $23,000 over 3 years. So if you'd like to check that out, that will be in the slides here. And just for their first year, even factoring in their one-time startup costs, they still spent about $2,000 less overall, and were projected to reduce around 329,000 gallons of water versus the use of disposables. So really made a big difference. Discovery Charter School in Amber Grove Heights invested in reusable trays and bowls to replace about 29,000 single-use trays and 6,000 bowls used every year. You can see that product life cost comparison between the metal and plastic utensils, as well as the reusable and styrofoam bowls. And though the price per item is higher for reusables, the overall cost is much lower. One thing to take into account when purchasing reusable trays is including the compartments. So a different school we worked with has reusable trays, but they're undivided. So it's just a flat tray with no compartments. So therefore they still have to use the single-use packaging, and it's not really easy to serve food into bulk on the tray. So just something to consider. Kaposia Education Center in South St. Paul purchased those reusable baskets, which Jill mentioned earlier. They're hoping to implement them this fall to use for breakfast and reduce the use of paper boats and plastic bags. Last year, they purchased 15,500 single-use paper boats. And they're also, looking to reduce the plastic bags and exploring a solid-sided boat as well with some of the other grant schools this year. So links to both of those products are in this slide if you'd like more information. Holy Trinity Catholic School in South St. Paul piloted these reusable clamshell containers pictured on the bottom right. So the kind of more opaque or clear looking jade color. The clamshells were made of polypropylene plastic. So a number 5, which is a safer reusable versus polycarbonate or melamine, as we've seen in toxicity studies from the CEH. And at the end of its life cycle, since it is a number 5, it can be recycled. So that's helpful. I also included just a link to this other type of reusable clamshell container that I recently learned about from 2 school districts in Massachusetts that's made from 50% recycled number 5 plastic. So those are linked for your information. St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Catholic School in Hastings last year purchased reusable cups to replace disposable cups they were previously using for water. So they used 9-ounce cups, which were the same cups that actually that the School of Environmental Studies purchased for their bulk milk dispenser in 2018. That worked well. So then if they didn't want to get a cup that was too tall to become too tippy and allow students to take more than they need, but they needed it to be, especially for the milk pilot from SES, over 8 ounces so that it could be used as a reimbursable meal and not be straight at the rim. So there's actually a line on the cups that show where 8 ounces is, which was helpful. And then the same cup was used for water in this school. Several schools have also recently added water dispensers in the cafeteria. You can see that another school in the bottom right is using those compostable cups for water. It is a requirement to make water available where lunch meals are served. Some schools do meet the requirement with the drinking fountain in or outside the cafeteria, but providing the reusable cups can replace the cost of disposable or compostable cups, and also is a wasted food prevention best practice to provide water. And you can also, if that's not possible, maybe encourage students to bring reusable water bottles to lunch, so they have a way to bring water back to their table. And then Discovery Charter School and Holy Trinity both implemented condiment dispensers to replace packets. And we learned the single condiment dispenser versus a station of multiple dispensers attached together was actually more helpful, so that if only one condiment was needed a certain day, not all dispensers needed to be placed out and then sanitized. It's also best to allow students to pump directly onto their tray or food item instead of creating the same problem with a disposable portion cup or pre-portioning everything, which eliminates kind of that time to do that. And then also the extra pre-portioned condiment cups that might need to be thrown away at the end of a meal period. Holy Trinity also cut down on their waste with napkin dispensers, which they got from their napkin vendor at no cost, and prevented students from taking more than one at a time, therefore reducing the number of napkins used. So lastly, 2 schools in our grant also explored the ability to add dishwashers to give themselves the ability to add reusable products, but they ran into the barriers of, the installation and remodeling costs. So for schools that weren't built with existing dishwasher infrastructure or space, several districts have begun a practice of adapting that central kitchen model of prep and distribution to include the collection of reusables to be sent back to the central kitchen to be washed and sanitized and then brought back out to the individual schools. So I've linked here some of that information for you. Minneapolis Public Schools and Palo Alto Unified School District have this model. So you have those plans available, as well as I also included the St. Paul Public Schools Zero Hunger Plan because they have some really interesting reusable innovation happening in their plan as well. There's also a state contract for reusable products available that I've linked. That last link for our grant, we partnered with the school's existing food service vendors, which included US Foods and Cisco for a majority of the reusable products. But we did have a few products we purchased from Webstaurant or other vendors. Not personally aware of this reusable products state contract vendor list, but it's a place to get started and to get quotes if you need help. I also have, the links and the records of all the products we purchased in our grant last year. So if there's a specific product you're interested in learning more about or need a vendor contact, feel free to reach out to me. Here's my contact information. So just as much as we can do to replace individual products, obviously reduces cost of those products and the waste from the trash, but also makes the sorting easier for students and might reduce the potential contamination in the containers. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out, or if your school is using a reusable product maybe that I'm not aware of, I guess you don't know what I'm aware of, but if it's not on these slides and you're using something that's innovative or that's working really well, I would love to learn more about it. So feel free to send me an email so I can begin to share that with other schools, so we're not reinventing the wheel every time and we can continue to just build on this network we're creating. So thanks so much. And I'm
do
going to
you want a
jump
quick
in.
question?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Does Dakota County offer grants to replace old water fountains with the kind that have the reusable bottle refill spouts?
We do. We wouldn't replace the whole fountain, but we would offer adding on that reusable water bottle filler. So that is eligible in our grant. Yes, up to a certain dollar amount. Oh, great question. Okay, so I'm just going to share my next slide here. I kind of knew. That's why I ended with myself, because I'm like, we're going to have so many great things we're talking about that now it's just me. So our last two kind of points here are outdoor recycling best practices. So another thing that was added as our new program developed in 2020 was outdoor recycling containers. So last year was our first time purchasing those in our grant. And I guess I just want to start with a few quick polls to learn more about your school's current outdoor recycling. So I want to learn, does your school currently have outdoor recycling containers? So not recycling dumpsters, but the containers people use in parking lots, playgrounds, stadiums. I'm just curious if you currently have recycling paired next to those trash. We'll just take a few more seconds. All right, so it looks like about a quarter do, and then we still need to be, and I'm actually surprised like that a lot of schools do have recycling so far outdoors, because we haven't really focused on it in our grant until last year. So that's great that you're doing that. And I will go into kind of some of the reasoning to be doing that, including that it is now required as part of our ordinance. And then the other question, when it comes to outdoor recycling, what are you most concerned with? So is it contamination, increased labor, or some of those other thoughts?
Contamination.
And feel free, if there's something we didn't list, to put it in the chat box. All right. So contamination is the highest concern that's here, with a few for increased labor, staff time, and upfront costs to kind of purchase the containers. So that's good to know, because we want to know what issues there are so we can work to address them. So that's helpful to have that feedback. So with our Dakota County ordinance, so Dakota County is required to develop programs to help achieve a 75% recycling rate for all waste generated in the county. Right now in 2020, we were at a 56% recycling rate in Dakota County. So our ordinance kind of outlines specific school recycling requirements. And the ones I wanted to focus on for this presentation today are the ones pertaining to outdoor recycling containers. So I kind of listed them out here, but our ordinance does require us to collect and recycle a designated list of recyclables, pair all trash, both indoor and outdoor containers with recycling within 10 feet, have color-coded labels on all containers, so blue for recycling, gray or black for trash, and then use those specific terms. So terms must be recycle or recycling on recycling labels, and trash on trash labels. For recycling, we must also have images of our acceptable materials, and we do have labels and metal signs provided by Dakota County at no cost. So if your schools need those, please let me know, and we could definitely assist with that. Images can be used on the trash, but we're kind of moving away from that because people get stuck looking for their exact item in their hand and guessing if they can't see it on either trash or recycling. So we just want to move towards teaching, when in doubt, throw it out or figure it out, but if it's not on the recycling, please don't put it in the recycling unless you're sure it's recyclable. And then just a few of those other requirements. Our best practices for outdoor recycling. So when thinking about an ideal outdoor recycling container, these are the best practices we've come up with. So having a covered top to be rainproof and keep recycling clean and dry. Lids on containers can also keep materials from blowing out as litter and reduces the weight of bags full of rain. It's important they're weather resistant. So thinking about where a container will be placed can help with this too. So if a container is placed on a sidewalk that's frequently salted, a metal container may rust more quickly. Aesthetics are important to consider. So outdoor containers we know can get expensive, and it's important to kind of prioritize where the nicer containers are really necessary. So maybe just the front entrances, not at every ball field. We need a nice container, maybe at the ball fields we can use a plastic barrel. Many containers like the ones pictured can be mounted into the ground as needed. So you'll want to consider if you need the containers anchored down and ensure that the trash and recycling are anchored within 10 feet of each other. And then considering how many gallons are needed for the space. So remembering all the materials previously were going into the trash only. So you might be able to cut your previous capacity in half. And staff also have to lift these containers. So when adding recycling, just making sure the container size is equivalent to the trash, not smaller than the trash. And also just thinking about where the placement is. So strategic locations, which I'll talk a little bit about more. And then the 2 bolded items are the best practices that are in our ordinance, as we already discussed. So lastly, just having those restrictive lid openings, Saturn or hole shape for recycling is really helpful. And then it's important to also understand how staff prefer to empty the container. So if a container is in an area that's not plowed in the winter, you want to make sure you have the ability to empty it through the top and not rely only on a door that has front service, because the snow or other materials might get in the way. So the container pictured actually on the top has the ability for both front and top service, which we worked specifically with the vendor to create this model. So some staff will choose to kind of use the front service doors to reduce back strain as much as possible, but then we'll empty through the top in the winter. So another consideration is learning if plastic bags are used as liners with the outdoor recycling containers, with the understanding bags can't go in the recycling dumpster and will have to be emptied out. But some schools might prefer to use metal containers because they're heavier and less likely to blow over. So they don't maybe need sandbags, but for a plastic barrel, maybe a sandbag would be needed. But if you're not using a bag in that plastic barrel, how are you going to lift the materials out? So just thinking through all of those things and what might potentially be an issue. You can also chain it or anchor it down in a different way other than a sandbag. And it's also hard to place trash on top of slant roofs. So when you see these containers, getting a lid that's kind of almost impossible to just pile trash on is helpful. It's also best practice to have a no-touch lid. So especially following our recent pandemic, no one wants to touch a lid to use it even less than they did before. So if a lid's going to be used, and we recommend, it's a definite best practice for recycling that it is covered, we would like it to not require to be touched to use it. So ensuring recycling at least is not easier to access than trash. So just more on this in a second with a specific example, but having those restrictive lid openings in the Saturn or hole shapes are really important to help reduce contamination. And then lanyards can help as well to keep the lids from walking away. And considering placing recycling on the right, that's just kind of our own little idea to go with the recycle right message. And then just thinking about, fires and also reducing the number of stations as much as possible, because we want to determine where they're needed, because with the addition of the recycling container, we're doubling the capacity, as I mentioned. So you might not need as many trash containers as before. So for this example, Lakeville Parks actually went from 71 total trash containers in this upper image to 28 total waste stations on the bottom image. So waste station is 2 containers, trash and recycling paired next to each other, because they had the same amount of waste, right? We're always gonna have the same amount of waste overall. We're just thinking about it in 2 different bags and containers. So they were identified initially, if we would have paired every of the 71 trash containers with recycling, that would have been overkill and much more work for staff. But when we are able to kind of strategically think about where they're actually needed, park maintenance staff time was actually reduced, and it actually saved costs because of the reduced time and bag cost spent previously. And there was not an increase in littering, and there was successful recycling in this example. So it is possible, which is helpful to think through. And here's just a few examples from our Dakota County School program. So you can see from 2020, these containers for front entrances, as well as some from the playground and athletic field spaces, working to pair containers maybe with existing trash, working with a stadium this grant program year. And in this example, I mean, we try to, this school already had an outdoor trash container that was green. So the ordinance only requires color-coded signage, blue for recycling, black or gray for trash. So it's always best to repurpose when you can, but if you are buying a container new, we definitely recommend color coding recycling as blue, trash as black or gray, and definitely not using a blue container for trash. So that's what we did this year. And then some of the lessons learned is just thinking about, you know, one of our major concerns from grant participants was dog waste and doubting there might be any recycling even to collect. So with the ordinance, pairing all outdoor trash with recycling is required. So we kind of shifted our focus to, okay, how can we make it successful? And we are curious to see how it's going to go, but we have to kind of address these issues. So these pictures are from Kaposia Education Center in South St. Paul on the bottom here. And you can see how many clean recyclables were collected. The head engineer, Michelle Penman, created a template to make the recycling a no-touch lid. So she actually cut this Saturn-shaped hole herself because the lids that these containers used only had the flap option. So it was nice because then recycling wouldn't be more inconvenient to use than their trash barrel, which might result in people maybe just putting their recyclables in the trash because they didn't want to touch the lid. And then for the trash container without a lid, it has holes drilled in the bottom here. And as previously mentioned, it's important to use a no-touch lid whenever possible. But in this upper right photo, you'll see, you know, if you aren't able to make no-touch lids work, work to ensure access is the same between recycling and trash. So if you weren't able to do this Saturn-shaped hole, for example, it'd be recommended to ensure trash had the same lid. So just leaving it be as both flap lids. So just a helpful standards, trash should be equal to or easier to contaminate than recycling. So considering if I had my dog waste and say I had this lid used for recycling, this wide open lid with the X on it, and next to a trash lid that I had to touch, I would probably, if I didn't care about recycling, put my dog waste in the one I didn't have to touch. So just thinking through those things and making sure that we're keeping recycling clean and ways to do that. And we do have this all developed in a recommendations list because we know it can be hard. I mean, there's a lot of containers out there on the market, but they might not all meet our recycling best practices. So we created this outdoor recycling recommendations list with 6 of these containers featured. So it can be a helpful place to start. And of course, we always tried to repurpose what schools had with a similar looking container as well, but sometimes it's just not possible. So this will be included with the webinar slides or workshop slides, and it'll have clickable links in it too, so you can go directly to those vendor pages. And you can always reach out to me. My email's here. If you need support with outdoor recycling recommendations, our grant program does provide support to purchase containers. But in the meantime, I'm happy to visit your school to provide advice, signage, labels at no cost to you for those things, because we won't be able to buy all the outdoor recycling containers for the entire county. So when you're looking at purchasing these yourself, that could be a helpful place to kind of get started. So hopefully this is a helpful start for you. I'm going to jump right into resources to try to get us out as close to 11:35 as possible. So some of our resources that we provide, we have free labels, as I mentioned, posters, activity guides to help students and staff know what can go where. And these are listed, and they're also, we have an online order form. This is clickable right here. So when these are posted, you can visit our webpage and they're just going to ship right out to you at your school at no cost. We have best practice documents for custodial, food service, classrooms, and wasted food prevention. So there's multiple versions depending on if you have organics or not. Those are on our webpage. And then cafeteria banners are available for free by request. So these are examples of what those look like in a few of cafeterias in our Dakota County schools. And if this sizing doesn't work for your needs, we can always work to develop a different type of size or type of signage. So please think about that if that would be helpful to you. Portable recycling and organics, as well as trash containers, are available to check out and borrow for free. So typically for outdoor events at schools, you know, containers come with the lids, the bags, and other resources like grabbers if you need them. And we do have education kits as well that include display materials for tabletop props and activities, such as our recycling wheel, spray bottles to make your own green cleaner, all types of fun things. as well as print resources and handouts and promotional materials like our recycled pencils made of blue jeans. So all of those are available to you for free if you're having a school event. We do have an online checkout system now for both the portable education or portable containers and education kits. So that's on our website. I put a link on this slide for that. Performances and field trip busing are available again. So those are on our website. You can fill out a request form. The performances are for K through 3, and it's actually a puppet show focused on recycling that comes directly to your school. And then the field trips are for 4th graders and up, student green teams, and even if your staff wanted to take for a staff meeting, let's go visit the recycling facility and landfill. We have the field trip busing available to kind of see where our materials end up and to visit recycling facilities, landfills, and compost sites. So please check out our website for those opportunities. And then I know we've talked about our grant program, but we know nearly 80% of school waste is recyclable or compostable. So we want to provide assistance to help schools reduce waste and recycle more. So we do have grants available up to $10,000 per school per year, or mini grants up to $1,000, which includes all types of eligible expenses. So feel free to check out our website. I actually put a link for all our 2020 grant participants. We have a report on kind of just highlights of what they did to give you ideas, but you can also have your own ideas. So open to talking more about that. If you're interested in getting support for your school, we have an e-news that's quarterly and sent out. You can sign up online for that. And we always have a schools in the spotlight article to stay in the loop about what other schools are doing. And then just this past year, we launched during COVID year, we launched a poster contest for America Recycles Day, which is November 15th. So we had this eligible for 4th grade students in Dakota County. And this year's theme was how to recycle right. So these were our 2 kind of winner and runner up posters selected. And there's prizes associated with that. They were displayed at our library, and just a fun way to continue to try to come up with different ways to get students involved. So you can kind of learn more about that on our webpage. We have those posters up. And I hope you participate next year if you work with 4th grade students. And then free compost delivery was available for the first time this year. So current school recycling program participants, just one more reason to get involved with our program. If you had participated in our program and also had organics collection, we provided 1 to 5 cubic yards of free compost to your school. So that helps students kind of see what organics becomes and use it in their school gardens and potted plants, as well as, repairing grass and turf. So that was a fun new project. And we worked with 8 schools. So we're hoping to do that again next year. And then all of this, a lot of this information I mentioned, and if you're not finding something, please send me an email, but it's on our webpage and it's continually updated. So I'm hoping to continue developing more resources, especially as they relate to green teams and other initiatives we're working on with reusables in schools. So that's a good way to stay in the loop on what we're doing. And this is my contact information. These are my dogs. I had to include them. Shameless plug, but we did it. We made it. Thank you so much for being here. I mean, remember, recycling isn't sorted out of the trash. So that's a misconception that's going around still sometimes. So it's really important to make sure we're putting things in the right place. And I'm here available to help if you need it. And thanks so much for joining us at our school recycling workshop today. There'll be a 2-minute survey sent to you this week to get your feedback to improve future workshops, hopefully. And if you'd like to get the CEU credits, just please send me an email and I'll send those out to you through either the Minnesota Board of School Administrators or School